Here's the thing most people won't admit. The Yamaha VMAX 1700 was never really about logic. It was always about emotion, attitude, and that slightly crazy idea of putting superbike power inside a muscle cruiser body. And when I started digging into the idea of a 2026 VMAX 1700, what surprised me was not the specs, it was the fact that the VMAX legend still lives mostly in people's heads, not in showrooms anymore. Because technically, the VMAX line actually ended production around 2020 after decades of dominance in the muscle bike space. And honestly, that already tells you something about how special this bike was. When I compare the VMAX to modern power cruisers, I notice something interesting. Most modern bikes try to balance electronics, rider aids, comfort, and usability. The VMAX didn't care. It was built around one core idea: raw, brutal acceleration. The 1679cc V4 engine made roughly 200 horsepower and massive torque, around 166 Nm. That is insane for a cruiser-style motorcycle. Even today, that number still commands respect. What surprised me was how early the torque hits. This isn't a bike you need to scream to redline. You twist the throttle and it just launches. Most people miss this. The VMAX wasn't fast only because of horsepower. It was fast because of how usable the power felt everywhere. Practical takeaway? If you ever ride or own a VMAX-style machine, throttle control matters more than bravery. Another thing I noticed is how misunderstood the VMAX design philosophy is. Some people think it's a cruiser, others think it's a drag bike. In reality, it's neither. The wet weight sits around 300 plus kilograms, which sounds heavy, but it was designed for straight-line stability and brutal launches, not tight corner carving. Most people make the mistake of judging it like a sport bike. That's the wrong mindset. The VMAX is like a muscle car on two wheels. You respect the weight, you respect the power, and you ride it with intention. Real-world takeaway? If you chase lap times, you'll hate it. If you chase adrenaline, you'll love it. Now let's talk about the 2026 idea honestly. I compared rumors, discussions, and actual historical production, and here's my personal take. The VMAX name has emotional power, but bringing it back exactly as it was is extremely difficult. Emission rules, market trends, and pricing pressure basically pushed Yamaha to stop producing it. And here's what most people miss. The muscle cruiser segment itself shrank. Riders shifted toward ADV bikes, sport nakeds, and tech-heavy touring bikes. So if a modern VMAX ever comes back, I think it would have to evolve. Maybe lighter, maybe hybrid tech, maybe electronic rider systems. But if Yamaha kept the soul, that massive V4 torque punch, it could still work. Something else that surprised me was how practical the VMAX wasn't, and that's actually part of its charm. Fuel range was limited because the tank was only around 15 liters. Seat comfort? Many riders upgraded it quickly. Maintenance access? Not exactly beginner-friendly. Most people think high-performance bikes must also be daily practical. The VMAX proved the opposite. It existed purely to make you feel something when you twist the throttle. Practical insight here? Not every motorcycle needs to be logical to be valuable. One thing I personally admire about the VMAX is how unapologetic it was. No fake adventure styling, no pretending to be multiple bike types, no trying to please anyone. It was built for riders who wanted acceleration that felt borderline unnecessary. And honestly, I think the modern motorcycle market is missing that slightly rebellious attitude. If I imagine a theoretical 2026 VMAX, here's what I think would matter most. Keep the V4 identity. Keep the aggressive intake and muscle stance. Add modern electronics quietly, not as the main selling point. Because if Yamaha ever makes the VMAX too refined, it stops being a VMAX, and that would be the biggest mistake possible. Here's the biggest misconception I see online. People think the VMAX was only about speed numbers. But when I compare it to modern fast bikes, I realize something. Plenty of bikes are faster now. but very few bikes feel as dramatic. And motorcycles are emotional machines, not spreadsheets. If you're someone dreaming about a VMAX-style bike today, my honest advice is this. Ask yourself one question. Do you want a motorcycle that is objectively perfect, or one that feels unforgettable every time you ride it? Because the VMAX always chose unforgettable. And personally, even if the VMAX never returns in a true 2026 form, I think it already did something most bikes never achieve. It made power feel theatrical, excessive, and unforgettable. And I honestly don't think the motorcycle world will ever fully replace that feeling.